Today we are continuing section 9.2. I believe I mentioned we'll spend at least 3 days on this section. So our objective today is the same it was yesterday. We are going to be using the substitution method to solve systems of equations. Our warm-ups are a review of what we did yesterday. So if you want to have those notes from yesterday handy, they might help you out. Our first step on those notes was to solve a system for a variable. Yesterday that was already done for us. Which system's already solved for one variable? The top one. We've already got y alone in the top. So that first step's done for us. Our second step was to substitute into the other equation. So I'm going to rewrite the bottom equation, and I'm going to leave a blank for which variable? Kian? Y. If y is by itself, I leave a blank for y in the other equation. So 12x plus 3, leave a blank, is equal to 6. What's going inside that blank? Kian? Good. Negative 4x plus 2 goes inside of that space that I left for y. The rest of what we do is just solving equations like we would have done last semester. So first I have to nobody knows what happens next. Jamal? Good. We have to distribute that 3 into the parentheses. So we have 12x. 3 times negative 4 is negative 12x. And then 3 times 2 is a positive 6. Next, I combine like terms. But what happens when I combine my like terms here? Natalie?
It
becomes a 0. They cancel out completely. So if that's a 0, 0 plus 6 just leaves us with a 6 there. So we have 6 equals 6. What does that mean for our answer? Jamal? Good. That means for number 1, we are going to have infinitely many solutions. If your variable goes away completely and you have a true statement like 6 equals 6, then there are infinitely many solutions. All right, number 2. Which equation's already solved? The top. So we need to rewrite the bottom, and we'll leave a blank for which variable? Ryan?
Just gonna look for the 4x minus 8 and then parentheses x plus 4 equals negative 16.
Good. So we have to leave the blank for the y, and in that blank we put the x plus 4. That's what Ryan just read off. Rewrite the second one, leave a blank for y, plug in the x plus 4. Kyan, what do I do next? Good. We do need to treat this like a negative 8 when we distribute because of the minus sign. So treat it like a negative 8 when you distribute it. Negative 8 times x. Everybody? Anybody?
Negative 8.
-8x. Negative 8 times 4
-32.
is negative 32. All right, this one, the variables are not going away. Connie, what do we do next? So we've got a 4x minus 8x. What could we do with those? Okay. Yeah, so combine them. So we're doing subtraction. So 4 minus 8. Anybody? Negative 4. So that's negative 4x minus 32 equals negative 16. Jaquan, what do I do after that? Good. We add 32 to both sides. I'm going to continue it off to the side here. So that leaves me with negative 4x is equal to positive 16. Finally, Jamal Dixon, what do I do? Divide by negative 4. What do I get for x? Negative 4, good. Am I finished with this problem? What do I still need? Okay, so we're not done until we have both x and y. So this is just part of our answer. Tariana, how am I going to find y? Good. If we know what x equals, we can use that information to help us figure out what y should equal. So if x is equal to negative 4, I can go back to one of these first equations and plug that in. I'm going to use the top one. So y equals negative 4 plus 4. What is negative 4 plus 4? 0. How do I need to write my answer? As an ordered pair, good. So my ordered pair here is going to be what, comma what? Ellie? Negative 4, comma 0. X, comma y. In order to use the substitution method, one of your variables should have a coefficient of 1. Sometimes you may have to solve for the variable first, then use the substitution method. You may have to solve for x or for y. Yesterday, all of our equations seemed to be solved for y, but it's possible that we could get x by itself instead. So today, we actually have to do that first step of choosing one of the equations and getting one of the variables alone. On example 1, we need to use the substitution method. So it is up to us. We get to choose which equation we use and which variable we get alone. We want whatever variable we get alone to have a coefficient of what? 1. That's what our notes just said. Do any of these already have a coefficient of 1? Yeah, which variable? X in which equation? The bottom. If you look at x in the bottom equation, it already has a coefficient of 1. So it's going to be our goal to get that variable by itself. So if you want to circle it, box it in, do something. This one's got a coefficient of 1. That's what I want to get alone. So now we have to decide how that's going to happen. Anybody have any ideas about how I can make that happen? Jamal? Good. We can subtract that 2y from both sides. That's going to leave the x alone. Now on these, if you wanted to go back to writing this as -7 minus 2y, that would be okay. I'm going to keep writing it to where the variable comes first. So -2y minus 7. That's how I recommend you do it. Since we're not graphing these, it's okay if you don't put it in the same order. You just need to make sure you have the correct signs. So in this case, they should both be negative. All right, so now x is alone. Once you get x alone, I would kind of cross out that original problem that you just recreated. Okay, so instead of using that original one, we'll now use this one that we transformed to get x alone. The reason that we need to do that is because now we have to take what we got and plug it into the other equation. So I don't want you to accidentally plug it back into the same one. If you do that, you're just going to run yourself in circles. Everything will end up canceling out. You might think you have infinitely many solutions when that's not correct. Okay, so just put a little line through it after you transform it so that you don't go back to that one. Now that we've got a variable alone, it's like what we did yesterday. So I'm going to rewrite my top equation. What should I leave a blank for? May? X. If x is what's alone here, that's what I should leave a blank for in the other one. So -2, leave a space, minus 5y equals 15. What's going in that space? Keon? Good. -2y minus 7 is what's going in that blank. Do we have any questions so far? The rest of this process is just like yesterday. Okay, so we have to now distribute the -2. -2 times -2y. Positive 4y. -2 times -7. Positive 14. There's still a minus 5y there. Why don't I distribute to the 5y? It's not in the parentheses. Okay, so don't just get distribute happy and distribute to everything. Only to what's in parentheses. Now I'm ready to combine like terms. Which terms can I combine? Natalie? Good. What does that give me? Anybody? Good. -1y. Or just -y. There's still a plus 14 there. Remember, we can combine like terms as long as they are on the same side of the equal sign. They don't have to be right next to each other. All right, we need to keep on solving. Any new hands want to help me out with solving the rest of this? Lexi? Good. That gives me -y equals 1. Am I finished? No. What else do I have to do? Divide by -1. So y equals -1. Am I done with this problem now? No. What do I still need to find? X. We need both x and y. So like yesterday, we then take that number that we got and plug it back in to help us find the other variable. So again, I would do it to the equation where x is alone. Technically, you can use any of the 3 equations, one of the first 2 or the one where x is alone. But I'm going to recommend you use it where the variable's already alone. So x equals -2 times -1 minus 7. -2 times -1 is 2 minus 7, -5. After I do all that work, I still need to remember to write my answer as an ordered pair. What's it going to be? Tariana? Jamal, what do you think? Why does -5 go first? Because it's x. So I don't care which one you solve for first. The x always has to get written first. Jamal?
How come we're not plugging -1 in for x? In front of the parentheses?
How come we're not plugging -1 in? Where at?
X equals -2y.
Yeah, so we plugged in the -2 for the y. Because we got y equals -1. Does that make sense? Okay, so yeah, we got to keep track of which variable we've solved for and which one we're still trying to find. So yesterday, we almost always had x first and then we found y. Today, it could go either way. So that's a good point. We got to keep track of that. All right, on example 2, we start this process over again. So my recommendation is to first look for a variable that has a coefficient of 1. Do we have one of those? Yes. Which variable? In the top. Which letter? X. X in the top. So I would circle that. We want to get that alone. That's step 1. Shannon's not here. Houston, how am I going to get that x alone? So we're looking at x plus 4y equals -19, and I want that x to be alone. Subtract 4y. Very good. We subtract 4y from both sides. That gives us x equals -4y minus 19. Once we have that x alone, we can sort of scratch out that equation so that we don't use it again. From now on, we'll use the one where x is alone. I need to rewrite my bottom equation, and I need to leave a blank for the x. Leave a blank for the x. 7 parentheses minus 4y equals -5. In that blank, what am I going to write? May? Good. -4y minus 19. Now we just have to solve this equation. So the first thing to do would be to distribute 7 times -4y. Anybody? Good. -28y. 7 times -19. -133. We still have a minus 4y equals -5 after all of that. All right, next thing, combine like terms. How many y's do I have when I combine? Positive or negative? -32. If I combine -28y minus 4y, I get a -32y minus 133 equals -5. We have to keep solving to get y by itself. Keon, what happens next? We're not ready to divide yet. First thing we gotta get rid of this. Good, we add the 133 to both sides. Negative 32y equals Natalie? 128. Okay, they've got different signs, so we subtract and keep the sign of the bigger number. So that's how we end up with a positive 128. Finally, to get y all by itself, Jakeem, what would I do? Do what? Divide by? Negative 32. Good. All right, when I do that, I get y equals? Negative 4. What do we still need to find? X. So in order to do that, we have to substitute negative 4 in for y. So we're going to take that negative 4 and plug it back in. X equals negative 4 times negative 4 minus 19. Negative 4 times negative 4. We're multiplying, so we get 16. 16 minus 19 is negative 3. Last step is to write my answer as an ordered pair, which in this case would be negative 3, negative 4. Questions about number 2? Nothing? Okay. All right, we'll try number 3 together. All right, so we determined we want to get that y alone in the top equation, and the best way to do that would be to add 3x to both sides. So when I do that, I get y equals 3x minus 16. Once that y is alone, I can sort of scratch out that equation so that I don't go back to it. Now I need to rewrite the other equation, and I need to leave a blank for who can defend their answer. Keon? Good. We leave a blank for y because we solved for y. If y is what's alone, that's what we have to leave a blank for in the other one. Whatever variable you just solved for, that's the one that gets the blank in the other equation. So negative 2x minus blank equals negative 4. This is where these problems can get a little tricky. You just have to pay attention to what you're doing. And it shouldn't be too bad, but it can get a little confusing. What is going into that blank I just made? May?
3x minus 16.
Beautiful. 3x minus 16. So Keon was asking, is this like a negative 1? Yes, we will treat it like it's a negative 1 when we go to distribute it. So we distribute into our parentheses. The negative 2x out in front just stays the same. Negative 1 times 3x. Anybody? Everybody should be able to answer that one. Negative 3x. Negative 1 times negative 16 is a positive 16. All right, next thing I have to do, Natalie.
By my terms.
What do I get?
-5x.
Very good. Okay. Next thing I need to do to solve for x, Nevaeh.
What's the question?
I'm trying to solve for x. What's the next step I need to take?
And
How are we going to get this x alone?
divide.
Not yet. We got to get rid of this first.
I don't know.
So what operation are we doing with the 16 right now?
I don't know.
What does this sign mean?
That means plus.
Okay, so what's the opposite of plus?
Minus subtract. I said subtract.
I didn't hear
The
subtract.
First time I said subtract. Then you was like, and I was like,
When I subtract -4 minus 16, what do I get? -20. The last thing I need to do to get x alone, Adrian? Not by the x, just by the 5, but the 5 is negative. Very good. So in that case, we get x equals 4, positive 4. We are not finished. We still need to get which variable? Y. We've got x, now we have to find y. So we're going to take this value for x and plug it back in so that we can figure out what the y is. So we plug it in for the x. 3 times 4 is 12. 12 minus 16 is -4. The very last thing I have to do is write my answer as an ordered pair. What will that be? 4, -4. So x, comma, y. Questions about example 3?